In today's video, I'm explaining every disturbing creature in the Witcher universe, from parasites that feed on your guilt to things that wear dead babies as their final form, starting with something that'll make you understand why Geralt drinks before every contract. Botchlings. These things are dead fetuses transformed into vengeful spirits, and that sentence alone should tell you everything about the Witcher's approach to horror. A botchling forms when an unwanted child is buried improperly, usually after being killed at birth. The guilt and trauma crystallize into something that crawls back out of the ground, looking like a nightmare wrapped in fetal flesh. The Bloody Baron quest in Witcher 3 throws you face first into this concept, and it's one of those moments where the game stops being fun and starts being genuinely uncomfortable. You're tracking down the Baron's missing wife and daughter when you discover his unborn child became one of these things. The creature looks exactly like what it is, a baby that never got to be a baby, twisted into something that scuttles on all fours with an oversized head and translucent skin. You can see its veins, you can hear it crying. Fighting it feels wrong because you're essentially beating up an infant's corpse, even if that corpse is trying to kill you with supernatural strength and blood. Curdling shrieks that alert every drowner in a mile radius. But here's where it gets worse. You can actually save a botchling by performing a ritual that transforms it into a lubberkin, a harmless house spirit that protects the family it never got to be part of. The game makes you carry this dead baby through a cemetery while fighting off wraiths, and the whole time it's whimpering and bleeding spectral energy. This isn't monster hunting. This is trauma therapy with swords. The Bloody Baron's entire storyline hinges on this creature, and depending on your choices, the family either finds peace or tears itself apart. CD Projekt Red took one of the darkest aspects of medieval life, infant mortality, and the shame around it, and turned it into a walking, crawling guilt machine. But dead babies are just physical horror. What comes next is where CD Projekt Red stopped making monsters you can kill and started making monsters that kill you from the inside out. And one detail about these creatures reveals why Witcher carry more than just swords. Plague Maidens. Speaking of things that should never exist, let's talk about what happened when disease becomes sentient. Plague Maidens are the physical manifestation of pestilence, and they appear in The Witcher 3's base game, looking like walking biohazards wrapped in rags. These things aren't just sick, they are sickness given form, purpose, and a really bad attitude. The lore gets specific here. Plague Maidens emerge in areas where disease has killed so many people that death itself leaves a stain on reality. They're literally born from mass graves and epidemic zones, rising up as humanoid figures covered in boils, open sores, and rotting flesh held together by plague energy. Their mere presence spreads infection. Stand too close and you start taking poison damage. Attack them and they explode into clouds of toxic gas that can wipe your health bar in seconds. They don't just kill you, they make you sick first, forcing you to watch your vitality drain while your vision blurs and Geralt starts coughing. The A Towerful of Mice quest introduces one as a manifestation tied to a plague curse on Fyke Isle, which tracks because nothing says psychological horror like fighting diseases that have learned to walk. You're dealing with a cursed tower, where the Plague Maiden embodies the suffering from a massacre and plague. They don't attack out of malice. They attack because spreading disease is what they are. It's not personal, it's existential, and that somehow makes it worse, because you can't reason with a plague. You can't negotiate with smallpox. You just have to kill it before it kills you. And even then, you're left wondering if you actually destroyed it or just scattered it somewhere else. Disease you can fight with potions and antidotes. But what happens when the monster isn't in your body, it's in your head? Keep that question in mind, because the answer explains why some Witcher contracts end with the client dead by their own hand, him. Now, we're getting into the psychological warfare section of the bestiary. A him is a demon that feeds on guilt, and its entire existence is built around making you suffer for things you regret. This isn't a creature that rips you apart with claws. It destroys you from the inside out by weaponizing your conscience. Skellige's Possession quest drops you into the middle of a Heim infestation, and the rules are simple but brutal. The demon attaches itself to someone carrying heavy guilt, then amplifies that guilt until the person breaks. It appears as a shadowy figure only the victim can see, constantly reminding them of their failures, their mistakes, their worst moments. In the quest, it's attached to a Jarl's child after the kid accidentally causes someone's death. The Heim doesn't threaten the child, it just whispers. It reminds. It makes the guilt so overwhelming that the child stops eating, stops sleeping, stops being a person, and becomes a vessel for self-hatred. The really disturbing part is how you defeat it. You can't kill a him with a sword because it's not physically present in any meaningful way. One method involves tricking it into jumping to a new host by creating a scenario where someone else performs an even worse act, giving the demon a juicier target. The other method requires a ritual where you lock the victim in a room, cover the walls with symbols, and essentially torture them until the him gets bored and leaves. Both options are awful. Both options work. CD Projekt Red looked at mental illness and trauma and asked, what if we made this a monster you have to outsmart? The Heim represents intrusive thoughts given demonic form, and fighting it means diving into someone's worst memories to find leverage. You're not slaying a dragon, you're performing psychological warfare on a guilt parasite. Guilt was just the beginning. What comes next, literally, cannot die no matter how many times you kill it, and the reason why reveals something disturbing about what these creatures really represent. Caretaker. This thing shows up in Hearts of Stone and immediately establishes itself as one of the most unsettling encounters in the entire game. The Caretaker is the groundskeeper of the Von Everec estate, and calling it a groundskeeper is like calling a shark a fish. Technically accurate, but wildly insufficient. You meet it in the same painted world where the Plague Maidens hang out, and the Caretaker looks like someone stretched a corpse over a scarecrow frame and then gave it a shovel. It's tall, impossibly thin, wearing a burlap hood that hides whatever passes for a face. The shovel it carries isn't a weapon, it's an extension of its being. This thing doesn't fight you, it performs maintenance, and you happen to be in the way of its work. Every time you damage it, the Caretaker stabs its shovel into the ground and heals itself by draining life from the earth around it. The grass withers, the flowers die, the ground cracks, and the Caretaker stands back up, ready to resume its duties. The fight is a war of attrition, where you're racing to out-damage its healing, while this silent, methodical entity just keeps working. It doesn't roar, it doesn't taunt. It occasionally rings a bell to summon wraiths, but otherwise it's completely silent. That silence is the worst part. You're used to monsters that scream or growl or give you some kind of emotional feedback. The Caretaker gives you nothing. It exists to maintain the Von Everec grounds, and it will maintain them whether you're alive or dead. You're not even an enemy to this thing. You're just debris that needs to be cleared. The symbolism hits harder when you realize the Caretaker represents Iris Von Everec's attempts to maintain her sanity in a deteriorating marriage. It's the part of her mind that kept trying to hold everything together, even as everything fell apart. The fact that it heals by killing the environment around it perfectly captures how Iris destroyed herself trying to preserve her relationship. CD Projekt Red turned depression and codependency into a boss fight, and they made it unkillable through normal means, because that's what mental illness feels like. You can damage it, you can knock it down, but it just keeps getting back up. You'd think an unkillable groundskeeper is peak horror, but at least the Caretaker has a purpose. What comes next is what happens when a curse doesn't just change your body. It erases everything human and leaves only hunger. Toad Prince. Hearts of Stone really went hard on the disturbing creature design, and the Toad Prince might be the most viscerally disgusting thing in the expansion. This is Ophiri royalty cursed into toad form, but don't expect a fairy tale transformation. This isn't a cute frog waiting for true love's kiss. This is a building-sized amphibian with toxic saliva, a taste for human flesh, and absolutely zero redeeming quality. The fight takes place in a sewer, because of course it does. The Toad Prince has claimed the underground as its lair, filling it with poison gas and half-digested corpses. When you finally encounter it, the creature is so massive it barely fits in the chamber. Its skin glistens with mucus. Its tongue shoots out like a harpoon, grabbing victims and dragging them into its mouth. And when it inhales, it creates a vacuum that pulls you toward those teeth while simultaneously preparing to exhale poison clouds that fill the entire arena. You're fighting in tight quarters against something that can kill you by breathing, but the really disturbing part comes from the lore. This was a prince, a human being, transformed by Olgierd von Everec's wish to eliminate him as a rival for Iris's hand in marriage, stripping away everything human until only hunger and rage remained. By the time Geralt fights it, there's nothing left of the person it used to be. The Toad Prince isn't a man trapped in a monster's body. It's a monster wearing a man's curse, and you kill it not because it's threatening anyone specifically, but because it exists, and existence has become suffering for everyone involved. That's not heroism. That's euthanasia with a silver sword. That was a curse that destroyed a mind. But what if the curse leaves your mind intact? What if you remember being human while your body forces you to do things that make you want to die? That's not a monster. That's torture with a heartbeat. Wights. Imagine if anorexia was a monster. That's what wights are. These creatures were once human women cursed to exist in a state of eternal hunger that can never be satisfied. No matter how much they eat, they're always starving, and what they eat is exclusively human flesh, preferably fresh. The Witcher doesn't do subtle metaphors. The La Cage aux Fous quest in the Blood and Wine expansion introduces you to Marlene, a wight living in an isolated mansion, and the whole encounter is designed to make you deeply uncomfortable. She appears as a withered corpse woman with rotting skin and hollow eyes, but she maintains the pretense of genteel society. She invites you to dinner. She serves food on fine china. She makes conversation about etiquette and proper manners, and the entire time, you're sitting across from something that wants to eat you and is barely holding back the urge. The food she serves is implied to be human remains. The husband she mentions is a corpse she's keeping in the house. The normal life she describes is a delusion built on top of murder and cannibalism. What makes wights so disturbing is that they remember being human. They know what they've become. They're trapped in bodies that won't die, but won't let them truly live, cursed to hunger forever, while everything around them decays. Marlene's dialogue reveals she understands how wrong this is, how monstrous she's become, but the curse won't let her stop. She'll eat you if she can. She'll hate herself for it afterwards. And then she'll do it again, because the hunger never ends. CD Projekt Red took eating disorders and body dysmorphia, cranked them into supernatural horror, and created something that's both pitiable and terrifying. The quest gives you the option to break her curse through an act of genuine kindness, which is the game's way of saying maybe the real monster was the societal standards that created this situation. But until you break that curse, you're having dinner with something that views you as the main course. Everything so far has been about corruption and decay. Creatures that destroy you physically or mentally. But here's where it gets strange, because what I'm about to explain looks harmless, looks helpful, and that's exactly why it's on this list. Godlings. Here's where things get weird, because godlings aren't actually disturbing in appearance. They look like small, childlike creatures with oversized heads and innocent eyes. They're helpful, they're friendly, they guide lost travelers and warn people about danger. So why are they on this list? Because what they represent is way more unsettling than any of the gore-covered monstrosities we've discussed. Godlings are ancient woodland spirits tied to specific locations, inspired by Polish mythological creatures like Bogenta. They can act as guardian and appear in places affected by suffering, Scythium, but are rare nature dwellers, rather than directly born from human belief or trauma. The Johnny sequence in Witcher 3 introduces a godling living in the swamps of Velen, and his story is basically everyone who lived here died horribly, so now I'm the only thing left that remembers this used to be a place worth protecting. He's friendly and helpful because that's his purpose, but his existence is proof that everyone he was supposed to protect failed. Godlings don't appear in thriving community. They appear in graveyards and ruin. They're the universe's way of saying this place was so thoroughly destroyed that even the spirits that remain are just trying to help. What makes this disturbing is the implication. Every godling represents a tragedy. Every friendly little creature you meet is a monument to dead communities and forgotten people. They're not malicious, but they're reminders that the world of The Witcher is so relentlessly awful that even the helpful spirits are born from suffering. You meet Johnny, and he's charming and assists you with your quest, but underlying every interaction is the knowledge that he exists, because dozens or hundreds of people died screaming in these swamps. CD Projekt Red made trauma cute, and that somehow makes it worse. Cute trauma spirits are one thing, but they're tied to places. They can't follow you. They can't replace you. Now imagine something that can copy you so perfectly that even your own memories become negotiable. That's not body horror. That's identity horror. Dopplers. Body snatchers are a classic horror trope. But The Witcher takes the concept and adds layers of moral complexity that make Dopplers genuinely unsettling in ways most shapeshifters aren't. These creatures can perfectly mimic anyone they encounter, copying not just appearance, but memories, personality, and mannerism. They don't just wear your face, they become you, and the original you is still walking around, which creates an immediate existential crisis. The Elusive Thief quest chain in Witcher 3 puts you on the trail of a Doppler who's been impersonating people to commit crime, and the reveal is that the Doppler isn't malicious, it's desperate. Dopplers are inherently peaceful creatures who prefer to avoid conflict, but they're also persecuted to the point of extinction. So this one started copying people to survive, taking on identities that would keep it safe. The problem is that every identity it takes displaces a real person, and every crime it commits gets blamed on someone innocent. The Doppler isn't evil, it's just trying to exist in a world that wants it dead. The really disturbing part comes when you confront it. The Doppler copies Geralt, and suddenly you're fighting fighting yourself. Same moves, same abilities, same everything. And while you're clashing swords with your own reflection, the game is asking, what makes you more real than this copy? The Doppler has your memories now. It knows everything you know. If it killed you and took your place, would anyone notice? Would Ciri? Would Yennefer? The quest resolves with the Doppler either dying or escaping, but the question lingers. In a world where perfect mimicry is possible, identity becomes negotiable. You're not fighting a monster. You're fighting the idea that you're replaceable. Identity theft is terrifying until you realize something worse. Everything we've covered, the guilt demons, the disease monsters, the hunger curses, they all have one thing in common. And when you understand what it is, the very first creature I mentioned suddenly makes sense in a way that'll ruin you. Botchlings return. I'm circling back to botchlings because there's a specific detail that needs to be addressed. When you transform a botchling into a lubberkin, you're not fixing the problem. You're just changing what shape the problem takes. A lubberkin is still the spirit of a dead child, still bound to the family that killed it, still tied to the guilt and trauma that created it in the first place. The transformation doesn't free it. It just makes it useful. Think about that. The good ending for a botchling is to trap it in eternal servitude to the family that murdered it. The lubberkin becomes a house spirit that protects its would-be parents and sibling, warning them of danger and bringing good luck. It's a guardian angel made from a dead baby, and everyone treats this as a happy resolution because at least it's not trying to kill anyone anymore. But the lubberkin never gets to rest. It never gets to move on. It just changes from being a manifestation of guilt to being a manifestation of penance. The Bloody Baron's lubberkin helps him find his wife. It guides you through the questline. It makes everything work out. And then it stays behind, presumably forever, watching over the family that consists of the man who beat his pregnant wife so badly she miscarried. That's the good ending. The bad ending is you kill it and it stays dead. CD Projekt Red looked at intergenerational trauma and asked, what if we made it helpful? The answer is, you get a slave ghost made from an aborted fetus. The Witcher doesn't do happy ending. It does have less awful ending, and even those come with condition. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the 7 levels of monsters in The Witcher, click the video on the screen.